Hello, this is Duncan Fitter of the Oracle Analytics Product Management Group. I'm your host for the day. Welcome to the Hear How Spatial Data Provides Greater Analytical Insight. I would like to introduce Mark Daynes, who is our guest speaker for today. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Duncan. Hello, everybody. Glad you could join me this morning. My name is Mark Daynes. I'm the Innovation Director at Beyond Systems. I've been working with Oracle technology now for about 30 years across multiple sectors. My main interest really is around about strategic use of analytics, whether that be from Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence through to Oracle Analytics Cloud, and now onto the new Fusion Analytics Warehouse. Also looking at ERP integration and custom development. My Twitter handle's DataVizMark, and I've got a website at datavizmark.com as well, where I put on some interesting bits and pieces and articles that I find might be useful to the community. I work for a company called Beyond Systems. We're a 100% Oracle specialized partner in Manchester in the UK. We're formed about 14 years ago by a group of ex-Oracle consultants. We work primarily with organizations to help them improve their business processes. Our main focus is around the use of Oracle ERP, both the eBiz and SaaS side of it. We're using Oracle Analytics to augment that process to deliver value out to the business. In addition to that, we also create some cloud software, cloud programs that we market either through G Cloud or the other distribution facilities, where we do things like financial forecasting for the public sector, and we also have a cloud controller for the Oracle Gen 2 cloud to help you shape the size of that cloud. What I'm going to do today is cover a scenario of using spatial data with Oracle Analytics. So we're going to do some spatial analysis to find some insights using the spatial capability, using the Oracle Spatial Studio tool, which is quite a new tool, but gives you a great sort of GUI access to all that spatial goodness that's in the database. Then we're going to take the subset of the data that we've analysed, and we're going to bring that into Oracle Analytics to do some analysis on that to find some extra value on that. So we're really going to show how these products can work together. The scenario I've created here is a fictitious restaurant, although I'm sure it creates delicious food anyway, called Mark's Meals, and I based it in a random place in London in England. Primarily, this scenario is just to show as a concept. I think everyone hopefully should be able to understand how this can work really. So what I want to do is, I've been running this restaurant for a number of years now as a sit-in restaurant. We decided to offer a delivery service to customers. What we're going to do initially is look at all the customers that we have, we've captured their details of where they live, and we know what they spent with us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer a delivery service to people within a 3-mile radius. So first of all, I'm going to do some marketing out to all of our customers who live within the 3-mile radius of our restaurant. And then for the lucky customer who has actually spent the most of us in our history, I'm going to offer them a free meal because I am that kind. But in order to do that, I need to know, well, actually, where are of all my customers, which ones are within a 3-mile radius, and how much, how to find that out quite easily. So I'm going to start doing that by using some spatial analysis to find that in a nice graphical way. What I'm then going to go and do is move on to using analytics to take that data. I'm going to pass that data back. So I'm going to look at all the customers that I have, find the ones, ring-fence the ones that are in the 3-mile radius of my restaurant, and I'm going to do some analysis on those in order to find out the one to offer free meal to, but then also bring in some other detailed transaction data, because we hold a history of the things of where they've been and where they've eaten with us. We've got a history of the dates that were here, and also the amount they spent as a transaction level. So I can have a look at that to look at the people's frequency. If it's just like a one-off, or people are attending quite frequently. And then once our little delivery service gets up and running, we can start to look at how that's performing. So we can have a look at that in the first week to see, do we need to tweak that in any way? Are our delivery drivers performing as we thought they might? Is the service being offered as we thought? So really, it's a nice, I think, synopsis here just to show how spatial analytics can work together. So let's get started on why these two tools. Well, this is only brief before we drop into the sort of the detail of it, really. But why Spatial Studio? Well, Spatial Studio, I think, is a great product because Oracle databases have got and have had for a long time quite a lot of spatial capability with them. But you may think you might need to be a programmer really to get the best out of that because it's because there's a lot of capability. Some of the commands require a bit of learning. However, Spatial Studio provides a relatively easy to use GUI on top of all of those. So you can use some drag and drop and click and follow through commands in order to do some spatial analysis. And there's quite a lot of those algorithms that have been surfaced through Spatial Studio. We'll take a look at some of those as we go through this process here. So what we can do is, what Spatial Studio allows us to do is take data, and that's either, say, like a table or a spreadsheet of data, and if it's not geocoded, then we can geocode it. So if we only have something like a postcode, we can geocode that data. But we might already have latitude and longitude in our data, and we can bring that in and just put an index on the column. We can also create, as well as geocoding the data, we can also bring in different layers. So if we want to look at, so as an example, we might have, if I'm building something as I work in the construction industry, I might have a projection of what the weather's going to be like in the future. So I can see where the wind's going to be blowing and what speed the wind is. And I can put that as a layer, and then I can put my building sites on it, because I might decide not to put a crane up and try to build something really tall at some point in the next week if the weather's going to be, if it's going to be too windy for me to really make best use of that crane. But also I can put different layers on if I know where there's a floodplain, or if there's where there's roads, and I can overlay different layers of things and see how they all interact with each other. And we'll have a look at that. And once we've done that analysis and we put some easy entry parameters into it and done the analysis and got the results, we can then export that data and ingest it into other products. And we're going to use Oracle Analytics as our destination here and investigate the data. Now, currently it's on version, I think 19.2, but 20.x is on the horizon, and that's got a bunch of more organic integration facilities in it. But we're looking at the 19.2, which is the one that's currently available. That's what we're going to focus on. As a small note here, while Spatial Studio has a bit of a look and feel of Oracle Analytics, it isn't actually licensed as part of Oracle Analytics. It's part of the database. Yeah, so it comes as part of the database. And Spatial Studio needs a database in order for it to store its metadata. So I think it needs 12.2 onwards in order to store its metadata. But I put a little link in there of a really useful FAQ that covers a lot of the information that you might want to know about getting started with Spatial Studio and what it is and how it works. And in terms of operating it, it's available in a number of ways you can deploy it. There's a standalone quick start methodology where you can download it and just run it as an app on your laptop, or you can plug it in as a Java component into WebLogic. But it's also available from the Oracle Marketplace, and I've seen a recent video with David Lapp doing a walkthrough presentation on how to install it from the Marketplace. So it's available through a number of methodologies, whatever I think best fits you, whether that's on-premise on the laptop, on-premise on desktop, on-premise within WebLogic, or actually or in the cloud. Oracle Analytics, we're going to say bring the data into Oracle Analytics. Oracle's flagship, it comes in a number of flavors. So we've got 50 different sort of source system connectors. It's got dashboard, it's got analytics, it's got data augmentation, visualization. It's got machine learning built into it. It's got a whole bunch of features and facilities, and it is available on either in the cloud as Oracle Analytics Cloud, on premises as OAS, Oracle Analytics Server, or as a hybrid deployment, and there's a desktop version as well. So it's a really, really powerful analytic platform. But it can be used by end users as a self-service platform as well. So it has the governance capability, but you can also do quite good self-service stuff with it as well. So let's get started and let's go look at our source data. So what I've got here is I've got two tables. So on the left-hand side here, I've got my list of my customers, and I've cut it down really quite substantially here, just so I've got some just the essence of the data here. So I've got just the postcode, the customer name, and these are just I randomly generated these postcodes within sort of the London area. So I've got the postcode, the amount they've actually spent with us, and the name. Relatively simple, I think. And then the other side, I've got the shop. So this is my Marks Meal shop, and that's the postcode where my shop is. All this data is stored in a 19C Oracle Autonomous warehouse, and there's hundreds of customers. So let's take that data and start to analyze it. So first of all, I'm just going to log into Oracle Spatial Studio and into my credentials. And there is actually one little thing here I wanted to note, which is quite a nice little feature now in the very latest version, is you can do a bit of brand management in it. So I've uploaded my own logo there. So we're going to see this logo appearing on the screen. So it says Beyond Spatial Studio. We just done our own branding, so you can do your sort of corporate looking branding if you're going to roll that out anywhere. Relatively straightforward here. So what we're going to do is gone into Spatial Studio. I need to load some data in. So basically, I've already created a connection. I've got a connection to my autonomous warehouse. I've saved you all that, but that wasn't anything more than me downloading a wallet really and connecting it to my autonomous warehouse. So I can create a data set now. So I've got a data set. I'm going to load that data set up, and the data set is as we saw here. This is the data I'm going to go and load in. So let's click on that data set. When I click on that, it gives you some options. I've got Spatial Studio here, which is the metadata database, which is an on-premise database I got, which is a metadata database. It's just all the metadata for Spatial Studio. And this DataVis Spatial here is my autonomous warehouse where I've got my data. But I can also note here, I can also load up shape files, GeoJSON files. So I can load up if I've got some shape files I want to load up, where I was talking about, say, like the plans of a building or something, or where, where I'm going to build a lot of houses or something, I can put that on as bring that on as a shape file. So if I click on that, that gives me a list, that gives me the ability to look at all of my data, and I'm going to take that table there, the S1 customers, and I'm going to go and create this as restaurant customers. So this is the name of the table that just contains my customer data, and I'm going to load it into a little data set here called restaurant customers. I was tempted to go and click on that actually. There we go, that's how lifelike it is. So just remind us that's the table we're bringing in here, just the postcodes of the customers. Now, what that does immediately as I do that is that brings here, it shows me a little icon here, which it shows that I've got some data, but it puts a little warning triangle on it, so that indicates to me as though there are some things that need attention to me. So whilst I've loaded the data up, there are some things I need to attend to, so it's just going to guide me through that. So if I click on that, I just load the data sub. So there's two things about your data set, Mark. One is I can't find a key column. And that's entirely right, because when I created that table, I didn't put a primary key on it. I put an index on it. So we're going to go and identify which is the primary, which is the key column for that data, because it needs to know what the key is. And also it says, what have you got in here? If you've got some geospatial data, we can lat long index it. But if you haven't, we can go and geocode the addresses for you, which is kind. So let's start off with fixing these things. So I just click on this first one, click on go to data set columns, and I identify by a little flip here that the ID column is my unique identifier. So I click on the validate key. It says the key is valid because it sees as a unique. It sees as the unique indexes on there. It's not primary key, so it's happy with that. So it uniquely identifies a column. And also, what's quite useful here is it showed me the sort of like a metadata range here. So it says your customers are from one to I've got some IDs and some sales and got some, just a list of the metadata behind it. Now I'm going to go and address the second issue, which is to geocode the addresses. So it's saying, right, you haven't got any geocoding of your data, so let's go and do that. So what I've done here, I click on that and I've just selected here's the postcode of the zip. So it says I want to make this the postcode. So let Spatial Studio know that this is the postcode column. So it says, what's your postcode, zip code? I said, it's this. I've got no other data in it than that, really. And I've just said, and it said, well, here, if you've not selected country, so I haven't got country in my data, my data set. If I had a full address and country in it as well, I could pick that out. Just if it's all in the same country, then set it here, which I'm able to do because it is all in the UK. So it just sort of helps that geocoding process a bit. That goes off, runs it, verifies it, and I've now got the ubiquitous icon here to say that data set in a couple of clicks has now been verified. So it now knows it's got a key, and it's been geocoded. I've got a new data set, and it's called restaurant customers. So I've got valid geocoded data. So I'm now at the point where I can start to use that data. So I can create a project. Click on the project. What I do here now is I can add that data set to the project. So I've got my data set of restaurant customers that's been geocoded. I just click on the add data elements here, and I add that data set to the project. It is as simple as that. So this is where it starts to get slightly interesting for me. Is we now have this geocoded data. You can see it's added a geometry column. So Spatial Studio's added a geometry column for us onto our data. This is the data as we had it before, and I can simply drag and drop that onto the map. It defaults to this map of San Francisco, but as I drop it on, it isn't actually going to go to Sacramento. It's going to do the math and work out where all those things are, and then it gives me it zooms into the context of where that is. So just by simply dragging and dropping that geocoded data onto here, on the map here, it's mapped out, and it's put me a dot on for each one of my customers. What it's done by default is it's created a small red dot. So all the dots are the same size, and they're taking up the lat longs of the geocoded data. So I can now see where all my customers are. What I can do though is change some. I can actually play with that data. So as well as doing that, it does actually allow me to do some filtering. Spatial Studio. So I'm not going to save this. I'm just going to show an example of filtering. So I can, when I've got my layer list here, these customers, I can click on the settings. I'll click on a filter and then say, right, by default, it showed me everything over 3 because the 3 is the lowest value, so it showed me all the data. So I can now say, well, actually, I'm only interested in sales of a certain amount, so where are my sort of highest people? So I can just go and change that value there to 500. So show me everyone who spent more than 500. And that's just showing the subsection of the data there of the people, and there's no one north, really. Everyone seems to be south who's spending more than 500 pounds with me over time, but that's already given me some useful insight in my data. But everything still looks like the same size because of the thing. So, but I can use some of the. I can actually just flip that back. So I'm just going to clear that out and put it back to where it was. Right. So now, rather than basing it on a single data point, I can use Spatial Studio here to say, right, rather than a single value, click here based on data. So in the style column of my customers, make the radius of that circle based on the size of the data. So make it relative. So i.e., the more they spent, the bigger the size of the circle. So visually, I've got a better idea of what's going on here. So make it say based on the size of the data. Which column do I want to use? Well, I might have a load of metric measure columns. So I'm going to pick on size because it might be longevity. How long have they been a customer? That might be more important to me in the indication. Not just how much they actually sold, but here I can see. So how much is sold? It shows me the minimum and the maximum values here, which is good. And then I can say put that in 4 number ranges. So I decided to put it in 4, and I can just regenerate this as many bins here as I like to do. So I can put 10 bins if I wanted, or 3 bins. But here I've just put 4 bins. So it's basically grouped the spend between 3 to 6, 160, 160, 170, 3, 174 over 474. They put it into, I've got 4 different sizes of blob, so I can just start to see a bit more clearly about where the spend is actually. I can take this a bit further actually, and say rather than just having it as a circle, I've got some other things. I can have heat maps or clusters. Well, clustering is quite interesting. So it's I'm looking between sort of the signal and the noise here. So I can cluster it, and it's going to create clusters for me, and I've got some control of the colouring and the size of the clustering. I can zoom in and zoom out, but I can start to see some nice sort of like groupings of clusters. So I can see like here I've got some sort of outliers around here, but some goodly chunk of people in the middle and then over here. And as I zoom in, the clusters, obviously the sizes are going to change as I do that and interact. But as well as clustering, heat mapping might be important for me. So I can just flip that to a heat map and start seeing heat maps of customers. I've got hot spots, cold spots, and I've got some sort of different weightings and intensity and opacity to change around with the heat with that. So these are just all instant different ways of visualizing that data that wasn't really available to me before. So that's a look at our customers. We brought some customers in, okay. But let's bring our restaurant location in and let's start doing some actual spatial analysis. So I'm going to load my restaurant in. So as you remember before, we had a restaurant, and it was the name of it, Mark's Meals, with a postcode. So what in that table? So I called it our shop hour table, and it's the same process as before. I'm just going to quickly run through that process. So I'm going to create the data. I'm going to call it Mark's Restaurant. It pops at the same thing before because the table's in the same sort of state. It hasn't got a key on it, and it hasn't got it hasn't got any geocoded data. But that's easy for me. I'm just going to go and flip that to say the ID column in there is the key. Check the key's valid, which it is, and then when it comes to me geocoding the data, I'm just going to go and say my postcode is that postcode. Thank you very much, and it's in London. So that will do the same thing again. I'm just going to geocode that data for me. And as soon as it's finished doing that, I'll get a nice little indication there that data is valid and available for use in the analysis. So once I've done that, I can actually look behind the scenes. So we'll have a little peek behind the curtain here, actually. So remember, this is our table before we geocoded it. Let's just have a quick look at what Spatial Studio did behind the scenes, or as far as I'm aware, what it did behind the scenes. This is prior to geocoding it. After geocoding it, it's created a geometry column, and it's created a geometry object type. So it's called GC geometry, and it's a geometry object. So it's added this to my data. So it's stored this into the database. So let's have a little further look at what that actually is. And what it is, if I drill into that data type here, and if I go into SQL Developer, I'll just have a look at that and edit it. It's created this geometry object type. And of that, it's quite complicated, what it's done for me here. It's put the metadata here, and all this is available in the manuals and online, so you can actually see what it's actually done. Not in Spatial Studio, it's because it's done a call out to the Oracle Spatial in the database that's done, and the engine's done this. So it's in the documentation for the Spatial in the database. So this 2001 indicates that it's a 2D point. There's different IDs for 2D points, 3D points, and this number here is just as a unique ID telling into a spatial metadata lookup, which is telling me really that this is Latin long. Yeah. So what it's done here is created for this restaurant, for my single point. It's created a single 2-dimensional point with a latitude and longitude of that and that. Yeah. So I can see my Latin longs are here. So if I look under the covers and we start to want to look technically at what's going on, this is what it's doing. And if I just test the table, you can see it's created this STO geometry key. I'm not going to go off into talking about that too much more than just making you aware of that's what it's done behind the scenes. But now we have that, we can go and add that to the data set. We can add that data set to the project. So the project currently just consists of all my restaurants. I'm going to go and add the data set that is Mark's Restaurant. So all I do is click on, we'll be clicking on that add data set, click on Mark's Restaurant. That appears now in my list of data sets. You can see in the project currently the only layer I have is customers. So I can drag Mark's Restaurant and I can go and drag that and drop it onto that map, which will create me a secondary layer. So when I have 2 layers on that map, one being restaurant customers and one being my restaurant. And there it is. So I can now see my restaurant and it appears as a red dot. Not very appealing to me. So what I can do though is I can use the power of Spatial Studio to go and flip that into an image that's more pertaining to the restaurant. The way I can do that, as we've seen these things before, we'll click on the styles and I'm going to leave it. And instead of it being a circle or a heat map or anything, I can change it to a symbol. There's a lot of images and symbols, and I picked a restaurant symbol, what you normally see in all the guides. I can change the size of it, the opacity, all that sort of bits and pieces, but I'll just leave it quite small, neat and cute here. And so it's quite clear to me now where it is. And also you can see as I've drilled into that map slightly, where I had it before, all these groupings are now distributing themselves out a bit. Okay, right. So what I'll do, so the camera just stopped there, just put me on for a second. So now I've now got these two layers. So I've got two layers. I've got my restaurant and my customers, so I can see everything in context. What I want to do now is some spatial analysis between this data. So what I'll do there is I can create analysis. So currently I've just been adding data sets. I've added two data sets. I'm going to create a new analysis between those two data sets. And the analysis is the one I've been wanting to do, which is looking at all my customers within the 3-mile radius of my restaurant. Now, spatial analysis. When I click on that spatial analysis, it brings me up a smorgasbord of operations that I can use. There's a lot here. It's almost overwhelming, the amount that's actually here, but it's actually split into nice things where they've done it as filters, combination, transformations, and different measures. So all of these are just easy to try out and play with, but they pretty much allow you to do things. So whereas filtering is filtering things within things, so I've got a shape covered by another shape, or shapes that could return shapes covered by another shape. All of that is available in this sort of the filtering side of it. There's a combination. There's a combination size of it as well. We can try and combine things or look at things joined together, and we're actually going to look at that as well. I'm going to use one of these because these are quite nice to be able to like rubber band things together and put a circle around things, so you can see like the boundaries of items. I've then also got some transformational shapes, so I can basically say if something overlaps something else, just show me the bit, or create me a point, or the smallest box that does something. And I've got some measures, so how far are things apart, determine that this specific distance between things, the minimum distance between shapes. There's a lot of spatial operations that aren't available. So we're going to do two of them to show them in operation, because the way that you do it is pretty much the same for all of them, whereby you click the one you want, or the one you think you want, and then you try it out and see what happens. So I'm going to take shapes within a specific distance of another, i.e. I want to see all the customers within a specific distance of my restaurant. So let's do that. So when I click on that, it says, give me the name here, or what we're going to call this resultant data set, because what it does is it creates resultant data set. So of that analysis, what are the results? So I'm going to call it lucky delivery radius, i.e. you're a lucky customer because you're now going to be in my new delivery radius and you can take advantage of me coming to deliver things to you. So that's going to be this subset of data. I'm going to call it the lucky delivery radius. So two things I'm going to use as part of the maths here. One is what am I actually going to subset, and that is my restaurant customers. So I'm going to take the restaurant customers and then say the layers you use as the filter. So marks my restaurant. So here's the thing I'm going to create, which is the list of all the lucky customers. What I'm going to use to filter as the superset, all of my customers. What I'm going to use as the thing is going to be a distance from my restaurant. And then I can just put in how far, and put 3, and then it gives me, but then there's a big list. And you can see how just big this list here of the different sorts of things, everything nautical miles to feet. So I can pick 3 miles. I pick 3 miles here. And that is the analysis. It's going to go and pick all the customers that are within a 3 miles radius of my restaurant. Simple as that. I press the run button on this, and it should go and then create me this lucky delivery radius analytic. So it does that relatively quickly, and then it appears on here. So it appears as in a different section now. So I've got these two data sets, and here's my analysis. What I can do with my analysis, well, I'm going to go and drag it onto my map here and have a look and see what that's given me. And what it has given me is, as you would expect, all my data points, all the little data points here, which are the customers within a 3 mile radius of my restaurant. So I can see now I'll have 3 layers on this map. Actually, 3 layers on this map now. So I've got restaurant customers, my restaurant, and the lucky delivery radius. So we can see that's 1, that's 2, and then all the other ones are the superset. Okay, what I can actually do as well is I can go do another analysis, which is put a little rubber band around to envelop all of those shapes. So because it's quite hard for me to actually see that in my mind, so I thought, well, I'll go and put a band around it, and then put that as a separate layer. So I can do there, say, right, I want to call this 3-mile band customers. I'm going to use this as another layer. And I'm going to just say, put a band around all my lucky delivery radius. So all of those, I want a band around those. Simple as that, run that. And what that does is that puts a band around all of these, and it's picked out these end points here. So it put a band, so I can start to see that. Now, I've now got 4 layers. Customers, my restaurant, the people within that radius, and this band layer. And what I can do, though, is I can move those layers around, so I can start to get to a bit of a better view of things. So what I can do is I can move that 3-mile band up, and there, so I can see that now. So that's give me that as the highlight. So I'm saying I want that as more prominent than anything else by moving those layers about. So I can now really clearly see all of these customers. Okay. Now the data I'm really interested in is these customers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract that data and have a look at it. I can actually turn off. I can close the eyes, and it's quite a nice little iconography. This I can close the eyes here to hide these layers, so that I don't delete them from the project. They just don't visualize. So I can turn off all of the restaurant customers, and I can turn off that band I put around, and here just see my restaurant and all the people in the 3-mile radius. So what I can do with that now is let's go and take these people in this 3-mile radius and go and have a look at the properties behind it. It's almost like another sneak peek, this actually, before we go and export the data. What I'm going to do here is if I go and look at the properties behind it, you'll see it's written a SQL statement for me, which is nice. So I can go and capture that SQL statement and have a look at it, because this is the actual code that it's running. So if I go and have a look at that and run that as a SQL statement, it's done. It's created this. It's taken my 2 tables. Yeah. It's got the geometry columns in the tables that it's created here, and it's written this SDO within distance, passing in the distance and the unit of the distance. So it's selected all of those that are true, all of those that meet that criteria. So what it actually does behind the scenes is, when it does this, is it runs these bits, it runs this bit of code. But I can capture that code here. So what I've done is I've captured that code just because I wanted to. And if I wanted to, I could go and create my own views on that data. In fact, I could even use Spatial Studio as almost like a way of being able to generate the code that I need. I can go and take that code and I can go and adjust that code and do what I like with it. But it's given me a nice little template to be able to do that with, without me knowing anything about how to write that code. But what I will do is, because we've got this lucky delivery radius as a data set in here, I'm not going to do anything with that code. I'm just going to take the data set it's created and do nothing more than press the export button and export that data. And what that will do for me is that allow me to export that in GeoJSON, so I can have it as a shape file and load that data up somewhere else, or I can take it as a CSV and then just have all these as data elements, and it's going to bring me this geometry data out. So what I can do is I can take that data, so that's all my geocoded customers within that radius, with my 3-mile radius, and I can go and take that data, and I can go and put it into Oracle Analytics. So we've now extracted it. So we've now found that ring fence of data. We've now found those customers we want. We've extracted the data. We can now load that up to Oracle Analytics, and we can say, right, of all those customers actually spent the most, and where are they? And then, but what about the other customers? Let's have a look at them. Let's have a look at some of them, and let's see what other analysis we can do to make things more interesting for us. And then perhaps start to think about, if we were going to do this really, how we start to put the foundations in for a more robust project. So the first process we're going to do is take that data set. We're going to visualize it. And then secondly, once we've done that, I'm going to take some detailed transactions we've got, which is not just the customers, it's the actual transactional level. So it's not just the total spend they've ever spent, it's all the transactions they've ever had with us on a transaction by transaction basis. Join that in with this data here, so I can see at a quite a low level what people have been spending. So I'm going to go into Oracle Analytics. So I hope you're familiar with it a bit, really, but if not, it should be really straightforward. I've done this specifically to be very straightforward. I'm going to go and create a project. So I'll create my sign-on screen here. I'm just going to go and start. I'm going to start by creating a data set. So I'm in Oracle Analytics. I'm going to create a data set. I'm going to drop in here. So I can bring data in Oracle Analytics. I can get data from lots of different connections and lots of different things, lots of different ways, as we briefly touched on this lots of different connectors, but I'm just going to bring it from a file here. So that extract I did, I'm going to go and get that lucky delivery radius file that we extracted, that we brought it, that originated from Spatial Studio, which is my customers, and load it into Oracle Analytics. Oracle Analytics profiles it a bit, gives me the option to do some things with it and put some, do some change some columns a bit around, which I will do. And you can see here what it's done is it's brought in this latitude and longitude, and Spatial's done that when it's broken the data out, and it's given me this lovely lat and long column here. So I've still got the postcode, but I've also got rid of the lat and longs. Then I can bring this into, as I press the add button in Oracle Analytics, it lets me change anything I want to. It suggests some augmentation for me here as well. But I'm just really going to bring this data through and into my project. So I just press add really, and bring this data through. I can then, there's my lucky delivery radius. I'm going to do no more really here than just click on the amount of sales and the customer name, press create best visualization, and it's created me a nice bar chart of all my customers. So these are the customers within the 3-mile radius, and I can now see their names and how much they spent with me. I can sort of see that anyway, but what I might want to do is just click on that little thing there and sort it by customer name, by sales high to low, or low to high, so it's easy for me to spot which is the highest spending one, which is customer 21, and it's just over £600. So they would be the people I'm going to go and speak to, and offer them the free delivery, because they're my top customer as I can see them. So they're the top customer who actually is applicable for delivery. What I'll do though, I can visualize this on a map within Oracle Analytics now. So what I can do is, all I do is really just drag this thing here, the amount of sales, and these 2 geocoded columns across, drag that across to my map, and I've now got a map. So I've got a bar chart, so I can see it in a sort of bar chart sort of way. I can also see it now. I can also see the more visualized, and I've just put the color in here. So the darker the color, the more they've spent. Oracle Analytics allows me to brush things, so this is what it looks like. But what's what? Well, actually, if I just brush on something here by clicking on it, it highlights it here, and vice versa. But it also allows me really to give it a better sort of visual attribute. So what I can do here is I can just go and change some data points. So I can go and change. So if I want to make the customer stand out a bit more, I can click on my best-selling customer. I can click on the data points and change the color of it. So where the color is blue currently, I can go and change that specific data point to black. So I'll just go and click on black and make it black, which makes that really really stand out. So it gives it some sort of pre-attentive attributes. So if I'm going to go and look at that now in Oracle Analytics, that is now really standing out to me. So I don't have to make any sort of cognitive decisions. I can just see that's really working for me. I can do the same with the map. Of course, it's consistent. There's consistency throughout. So I can click on that. It highlights this one. It highlights this guy here. I can just go and change the color of that data point to be black as well. So when I get that one really stands out. So together, they really do stand out. However, I can layer these pre-attentive attributes. So to make it actually even stand out even more, I can go and change the shape of it. So I'm just going to change the shape of that data point. I'm going to go and change that to be an X. So that does really actually stand out then. So, X marks the spot, I think we'll see here. So now I'm looking at my analytic, I can see, right, of my customers, here's the biggest selling one. It's all in black. It's got a big X on it. Let's go and contact him and keep it, he's the winner. Now, if I say I could focus on the high spenders, I can have a look at what other people have been doing as well, though, because I've got all of this data. I can drag sales up to here, and I can go and it'll create me a filter. And it'll say, hey, do you want to, of all this data you've got here and all these customers, how do you want to filter it? Because there's your automatic distribution of data. £10, £3 up to 600. I can change. I get the full range by default, but I can go and change that filter type to be a top 10 or bottom end. So I want to see the people who aren't spending very much, people who are coming in frequently but not spending much money. Perhaps I want to go and do something with them. But I can go and say, well, give me the top 10 people. There we go. Quickly to the top 10. All that's visualized on the map at the same time. I'm going to say top 10. I can just by default I can change it to 15. See top 15. See how that's sort of working. As well as that, I can go and create expression filters on that data that I've got. And I've been putting expression in, so if I want to be more sort of precision, but a bit more precise with that, I can say everyone who's actually selling over £519. Everyone who's bought more than £519 worth of products, let me see those. I've got these two filters together. If I was really doing this for real, I'd probably hide that filter, disable that filter, and just have this one as the overriding one. But so there we go. Now, what I can just do here, because I'm conscious of sort of time, is bring in some detailed transaction data. So I've got the data that I brought in from Spatial Studio, which is the data I wanted to analyze, have a look at it. I can bring some detailed transaction data and also look at delivery data. So what I can do here is just I can add another data set to this. So I've got my detailed transactions in an autonomous warehouse for all of my customers. So they're on this autonomous warehouse. I can just add them as a data set. So here I am adding them as I've just clicked on that and just added it as a data set to my project. I've done no more than that. What it's done is it's put a line here, because that line here is saying, look, you've got two data sets and you can play those two data sets, but currently they're not joined together. So what I can do is I know they are the join between these two data sets. I deliberately made it more difficult for myself because I'm going to join the ID to the customer ID. So of the customer transactions, the customer ID is the customer ID, and this here is the ID of the customer. So they join together. So I can click on my data diagram between here. I've got a data diagram in Oracle Analytics. All I just say to do to join these two things together is just click on a little link between them and say, well, I've got my customer detailed transactions. There's the key that joins my lucky delivery people. It just joins them together, and it puts a little one to identify there's one join between them, and these are now it loses the gap. So I can now drag things from here and from here to create things where they all join together. So I did that quite quickly. I missed just sort of hit a couple of steps here, because what I did was I've put in the detailed transactions by customer now. So here's what we had before, which is our customers and how much they spent in total, and then I just dragged the details down to here, the actual amount by spend by customer, so I can see all my customer numbers down, the customer IDs down here. And I can see all these little things here, all the transactions that they've ever had with us. I can go and drill into that if I wanted to, just by going to keep selected, which is a great thing to either keep or throw away things. So if I just want to look at a subset of customers, I can just highlight those, and I can do that on the map as well, just ring fence things on the map. Just keep them. So I'm just going to focus on those 4 customers, because that's quite a lot of data to look at. Look at those 4 customers, and that just gives me those 4 customers. And I just keep those 4 customers. It's put a little filter at the top there to do that, and then I've just flipped that thing there from being a bar chart to being something that's actually more akin to showing me the actual date of the transactions, so I can see like the lineage, so I can see when people bought things. So I've got these 4 customers here. I just put them into little blocks like that, so I can quite easily see when people were buying. So this customer here, this customer here, what how much they spent as a transaction and what the date of that transaction. Then I can just start taking that even further. I'll just really look to wrap this up now, really. But once our deliveries start, we can then start to process all that data again. So we can start processing all that data and start thinking about how to make this a bit more robust. But now that's working, we can start looking at, say, the delivery drivers and the star ratings and bring that data into Oracle Analytics. Yeah, so I can replace that transactional data. It's with my delivery data, so I can now see I'm starting getting deliveries as well as people doing collections, and they've got a star rating for my delivery drivers. So I can bring that in on my customer transactions and start to do some analysis of that. And this is where explain's really good, because there's an explain functionality in Oracle Analytics, which actually explains the columns. So it does some sort of machine learning, really analytic on it. So I can see here my delivery driver data that I brought in. It's showing me that the star rating, it's saying the star rating of the quality of service is actually driven by delivery driver is the key driver. And if I look at the star ratings, I've got between 1, 2, and 3 stars, where 3 is the highest rating. Mark, which is me, I've been doing some work with but I've been a bit tardy with my deliveries. I'm getting a 1-star rating here, so it's showing here. I can bring that onto Oracle Analytics just by clicking the button, and I can start to look at my delivery drivers now. So I can start to see here that Mark, maybe I need to pull my socks up a bit of my deliveries, whereas everybody else is doing pretty well. And then I can just really start to push that even further with more analytics. I won't really drop into this in too much detail, but you can start to see the sort of the level of things I can start to do with this more data. So I can start off with spatial, I can start to augment that with other bits of data about service and delivery, and then really sort of focus in on what I want. So really, as always, summary here, I'm saying that Spatial Studio is really excellent for manipulating and creating spatial subset data, and that's will be more challenging to do otherwise. And then being able to pass it off to Oracle Analytics to consume the results of that spatial analysis, and then integrate and augment that with other data, really helps to be able to create stories. So I think working together, if you've got some things that might need some spatial analysis, working together with Oracle Analytics, I think you can create quite a powerful platform for creating stories, for presentations. I've put some links here there's some great blogs on spatial from Oracle and Oracle Analytics blogs as well, which cover some of that. And I've also just put my email address on there if anyone wants to contact me about anything. I'll have a bit of a chat, and also my Twitter handle. So that is over to our Q&A, really. If there's any questions, I think there's a questions panel here.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, we have time for a few questions. Just let Mark bring up the Q&A screen. If any of you, I do notice that a few people have started to ask questions, but there is Q&A functionality. Please do ask Mark a few questions, and he will read them out and answer them best he can in the last few minutes that we've got. Thank you. Back to you, Mark.
Right. Okay. So first one on the list is: does Spatial only work with Autonomous Database, or does it work with any other ones too? Any other ones? I'm assuming you mean any other databases. Yes, I just happen to use the Oracle Autonomous Warehouse because it's great. It's a lovely fast cloud database, but it works with any other Oracle database that has spatial capabilities. So if you happen to have like an 18C or a 12.2 database, then it'll absolutely work with those as well. Can you give me an idea of how to get Spatial Studio up and running on my own machine so I can try it out, and how long will that take me? Yes, I would just type in Oracle Spatial Studio and look for the download, and the download gives you all the instructions on how to download it and install it on your own machine and what you need to do. Because the quick start literally is a quick start. You can be up and running really, really quickly in, I don't know, between 10 minutes and half an hour, I would say, really, to be capable. You do it as long as you've got the prerequisites of you have a database you can store the metadata in, and I think the JD currently it's JDK 1.8. You need a JDK 1.8 for it to run. And yeah, you just download it, install it, unpack it, unzip it, and you can get it running. And there's a README there, and you can edit and tune the parameters. You can tune the memory parameters, the amount of memory it's and things like that, so you can make it hopefully fit your machine. Another one: can I use the desktop analytics tool as well as a cloud wants to use Spatial? Yes, you can. You don't have to use Oracle Analytics Cloud or Oracle Analytics Server. You can use the Oracle Analytics Desktop, which is what I actually flipped to using that there. So I was actually using a desktop, and that works really well with it. And the final question is: are you running this session anytime in the future, as I have colleagues who would be interested? Well, I believe this session is actually being recorded and will be available, I think, but I think Duncan will tell us more about that. But I'd be happy to run, very happy to run the session again, and if or a variant of it anyway. Then when I do so, I'll advertise it out through my Twitter and through Beyond Systems website and Twitter tweets as well. That's it for the questions I can see, Duncan.
Thank you again, Mark, for a great session. Absolutely, you're right. If you want to watch a replay of this one, or you want to catch up on any of the sessions that we've already run, or want to have a look at any of the sessions that we are about to run, you will find this session and those sessions at www.oracle.com/OA Summit. So that's oracle.com/OA Summit, and then you will see the recording. It will be there later on this afternoon. So we will close the session there. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Stay safe, and look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thank you.